Hello and welcome to another edition of Recycle, Don't Be a Waster, our regular podcast on all things recycling and environment. I suppose not meaning to sound too negative, but sometimes on our podcast we tend to talk an awful lot about plastic, the negative aspects of plastic and things like that. You know, and it's almost like that old the poster for Jaws, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. There's another hidden, lurking something wrong. And, you know, in this instance, that is, well, sometimes it is hiding in the water, and that is microplastics, which, you know, is becoming more and more, I suppose, in the media, we're becoming aware of it. Like, it's something I don't think I had heard of, say, 10 years ago. I don't think it was something that people were really aware of it generally, and I think it's, thankfully, there is some attention being put on it, and we are looking at it. You know, what are microplastics? Microplastics are, like, fundamentally, you know, we're not going to get into the exact science, the measurements, etc., but really they are extremely small amounts of plastic that, when larger amounts of plastic break down through friction or decay or whatever it is, you know, whether that's a plastic bag breaking down, decomposing, whether it's a plastic road with a car driving across it and very minute pieces of plastic breaking off it, whether it's pieces of plastic in the ocean, you know, with waves smashing against it in tiny, tiny pieces, similar to sand, but obviously smaller, that you, with that, just over time it breaks down. And that is how plastic will break down. It doesn't, you know, go from a fully formed plastic bottle to no plastic bottle. It goes from fully formed plastic bottle to minuscule tiny amounts of plastic breaking off it and going into the environment. And I suppose the big issue is we really do not know what this does. There's an old saying that out of sight, out of mind. And I think, you know, to some extent in this instance, it's very pertinent when you can't see that plastic waste anymore. Maybe we like to believe that it isn't there, but it is there. And it's so microscopic that it's having impacts on all different aspects, all different, you know, parts of life. From, I think we are aware in 2022 that pretty much all the fish in the sea, pretty much all the sea life, has consumed some aspect of plastic. You know, just I think we've covered in a previous podcast that a lot of sea life and even birds are attracted to the colour and potentially the smell of plastic. Obviously, plastic is very bright colours in many instances, and we have seen there is evidence that animals, sea life, like to eat it. The long-term repercussions, obviously, we know about turtles and straws and these sort of things, but the consumption of microplastics is, I suppose, it's a much more grey area. You know, you're not going to end up in a A&E department or accident and emergency. You know, it's not a traumatic injury, but it's potentially bad. I'll be honest, I don't know if it is. I don't know really, you know, what will happen over time, but there is evidence that it leads to inflammation in animals. You know, I think we're seeing it moving up the food chain. Like, realistically, you know, one animal consumes the plastic, then it moves into the animal that consumes it and on up the food chain. And, you know, I think we like to still think of ourselves as top of the food chain as humans. And obviously that's the inevitable end point where this goes. You know, there is a lot of evidence, we've seen it in studies, that products, you know, consumer products now have been shown to have trace elements of microscopic aspects of plastics. We see them in salt, the salt cellars you can buy in the supermarket. We see them in canned goods. You know, I think we've seen them in bottled water. Pretty much any product that you purchase will probably, and again I'm saying probably, there is a lot of evidence that it will, through statistical studies and through different research, that there will be aspects of plastic in those. And then obviously when you consume that will get into the human body. And now we're seeing the inevitable march of time, and there's evidence that humans, there is microscopic aspects of microplastics in human bodies, from the lungs to the ones I've seen are the lungs, some of the internal organs, and even the veins in the blood supply. And, you know, realistically, we do not know what that does. We do not know the long-term repercussions of that. There is some suggestion that it could lead to inflammation. I'll not speculate on that too much, but call me old-fashioned, I would prefer not to have little tiny amounts of plastic floating around inside my bloodstream. That's just me. Maybe you're different. But I suppose that is where we are in 2022. That is the issue with microplastics. And it's, if we're saying what is the solution to it, I'm going to be honest, I don't know. I don't have one. I don't have one to give you. The plastic is already in the environment. It is already broken down. It is already, and obviously we're pumping more and more into the environment. Of course, let's not do that. That's an easier solution. Let's find ways to reduce that. But if we're actually talking about the plastic, the microplastics that are currently already there, already in the environment, how do we deal with that? Look, I don't know, and I don't know if anybody knows. I think, the facts we have about plastic, it breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces. It lasts for hundreds or thousands of years, depending on the environment and the exact type of plastic. And, what is it made up from? It is made up of, I suppose, fundamentally petrochemicals changed through a chemical process into plastic. And, what does that do to the human body? Again, uncertain. So, I suppose, if I was a politician, if I was running in this Australian election in 2022, federal election, what would I... And an awful lot of people are running under climate change and environmental aspects and this sort of stuff, but I haven't heard anyone really talk about microplastics. My suggestion, what would I suggest? My suggestion would be, I think we need some research. I think we need... I think it's a pertinent enough question. I think it's important enough. Certainly with where we live, most of us live on the ocean or near the ocean. I think it's that 90% of the Australian population lives within, 50 kilometres of the sea. So it's very pertinent to people in Australia. And I think there should be more investigation. I think certainly funding should go into looking at A, what does it do to the human body? B, what does it do to plant and animal life? Sea life. C, how do we combat this issue? Can we filter it? Can we, what is the methodology? Do we have to? Is there a need to do this? And if so, what should we do? Because, I just think it's one of those issues that I would prefer to have a better comment or a better opinion to give you than we don't know. But I suppose at 2022, that is where we are. We don't know. I think we have to accept that the environment has led to there are a lot more autoimmune illnesses now than there used to be. I think in the United States they show that issues such as asthma, eczema, or eczema, however you pronounce it, those sort of issues, even Crohn's disease, autoimmune issues like that are increasing in prevalence all the time. Again, the reasons for it, there's different arguments, but is it atmospheric? Is it environmental pollution? We don't really know, and I think this is just one other with this microplastic issue, which is really growing. If you think about the proliferation of plastic, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And, as it takes so long to break down, clearly the problem 5 years from now will be twice or three times or whatever it is from today. So now is the time to really look into it. I suppose, that's what I would suggest. Let's actually get some scientists together. Let's look at this issue. Let's see if we can have practical solutions to it, if those are necessary. And then at least at that point, if it's something we don't need to worry about, do you know what? Hey, that's fine. That's fine at that point. But up to then, I'm a big believer in having more info. So, that's what I'll leave it there today. And this was actually, I started thinking about this when I looked into the plastic roads, which sounded like a great idea. But then when you hear about the microplastic aspect, obviously through friction, trucks, etc., brakes on a plastic road, inevitably there will be microplastics released, and then we get into this scenario. So, before we start heading off building lots of plastic roads, I think we should maybe look at this first. Another thing what we'll do on these podcasts is I think we'd like to share with our listeners some just interesting recycling projects, interesting recycling companies, environmental companies that we're aware of. So, if you operate a business like that or a project like that or anything like that really, whether professionally or just on an amateur basis, just reach out to us. If it's pertinent, if it's interesting to our listeners, we'll give you a shout out. So, and we'll try to do one on each episode if we can. So the one today, I got approached, or I became aware of someone recently who is based in Newcastle, New South Wales, a lady called Jess, and they are running a business You can find them at resourcefulliving.com.au. That's resourcefulliving.com.au. And they're based in Newcastle, New South Wales, just up the road from us here in Sydney. And they are operating, a very interesting business, making lovely products that on their website, lovely products made basically from plastic. A lot of it's seemingly, ocean plastic or plastic that's been dumped or recovered from the ocean. They make aspects such as tables. I see here a side table made from 41 shampoo bottles, serving boards, and all these sort of things. So it's great to see people focusing on aspects like this, the circular economy, and we wish them the best. And if you are in the market for any of these, anything like that for your house, your kitchen that's environmentally friendly, that also looks really nice, I think it's well worth checking out. So once again, that's resourcefulliving.com.au, and we will place that in the show notes. So have a great day. Hopefully the weather picks up. It's pretty grim here at the moment in Sydney. But I hope you all have a great week and a great weekend. So once again, our tagline is recycle. Don't be a waster.